Hi BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for a little bit of a mini book haul. So I recently finally went to Black Castle Books. I told you last year that in January, which is now January, I was going to send some of the donated books to the Black Castle Bookshop, which I really love how that particular bookshop will actually do the whole thing where you get credit that you can use on books that you want to buy there. Because unfortunately, the one closest to me, the Roast Office, they don't do that, and I'm trying to understand why. I think maybe it's because it's strictly volunteer, it's not their job. Like at the Black Castle, this couple's, I think they're a couple I think they have a kid too, a son. It's their job, it's their business. And while I think the Roast Office, it's not, although it might be Lisa's business, but it's strictly volunteer, so maybe that's why they don't do the whole, or maybe it's just, like, because of this community, they figure that they don't need to. I don't know, but I really kind of like the idea of the whole, you get half off or 20% off or something off to, when you bring books in to be donated. So I wanted to show you all the books I bought recently from there. I took 2 trips, actually. So now the ones I showed you in the hopeful thumbnail are not all the books that I bought from there, but in the last 2 days, because I've been there like 4 times now. I think 4 or 5 times. Not recently though. Like last year I went a few times. But I've been there probably really only 4. I don't know. But anyway, I'm talking about like altogether or in these past 2 visits. This isn't all of them because I couldn't hold all of them up for the thumbnail, so I'm just showing you a handful of them. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I've been looking for Trollope since. So I've been wanting to collect Trollope books since 2018, I think. Because I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Steve Donahue or Katie from Books and Things or Kate Howe or one of them or even someone else that brought Anthony Trollope to my attention. And I did see, and I wanted to try one. And I remember getting the 4th or 5th book from his Barsetshire series from the library because it's the only one they had. And I didn't realize it until I brought it home. And then I realized it was in the middle of the series, and it's one of those series where, like, it's a regular series where you have to read the books in a certain in order. You can't just read them randomly, because there's some series, like companion series, where you can read the books in order. You don't have to read the books in order. But the typical series, most series you have to read them in order because they continue on with the first book. You start with the first book, and then the story continues on the second, third, and etc. However many books in the series. So, unfortunately, I couldn't read that one. I had to return that one and focus on the other books. And the good news is it wasn't the only one I got from the library that visit. So, I started looking for Anthony Trollope books. And for the longest time, I did not find them at the Roast Office bookshop. And then one day, the whole Barsetshire series in these really old vintage looking, and not like vintage editions, but actual vintage books that were old. All of a sudden, like the whole series was there, and I had already planned for it's probably Christmas. I already had them on my Amazon wish list, so I was hoping I would get them for Christmas, and I was like, I don't want to buy the one. I will only buy some of them because I had the first few I had some of them on my Amazon wish list, so I would buy the ones that weren't on the Amazon wish list. So I got some of them in those versions, and then I got paperback ones as well. I can't remember what edition they are. So the series isn't, like, there's a couple in the series that aren't in the same edition as they're not all in the same edition. Like some of them, like a few of them are in the same, Like 3 of them are in the that old book, and then 2 of the books are in the paperback. And like I said, I can't remember what edition it was. I have to look at it. So anyway, so I've still been looking for them, and actually coincidentally a few days ago when I was at the Rose Office, because it is open, I did see copies of the one that I bought, the paperback ones in that same edition. And I can't remember. I just remember that it's kind of you can either get a bluish purplish cover, like close to like a periwinkle kind of coloring on the book, and then there's another color like a yellow or something, or blue, or actual blue, more blue or something color. I can't think of what it's called. But I also got a D.H. Lawrence book in that edition, and I got a Old Curiosity Shop came in that edition when I ordered it online from Thrift Books. It came in that edition. I mean, and really the only time I ever care about the edition I'm going to get at Thrift Books when I order a book from there, when I've ordered a book from there, is I've been wanting to collect vintage editions of books. Like the actual vintage edition, not old books, but so anyway, the other day, the first time, I think it was in the first or the second time, I finally found the Anthony Trollope book that was not part of the Barsetshire series, and it was, I don't know if it's part of the other series, I have to look again, but that is Anthony Trollope's The American Senator. And this, let's see, because sometimes if it's part of a series, then it might, although I want to say, it might be a standalone. I think it's a standalone. All the stuff in the introduction, like, I always skip the introduction, but the introductions and the, bibliography or, like, notes on the text and, like a timeline of the authors. There are so many pages of that in the beginning. And I always skip that because I just want to read the story. I don't. But, okay. I'm going to read the back. Okay. His main concern was materialism seen through the eyes of Mr. Gotobed, an American senator who was invited to the small country town of Dillsborough. There, during one winter season, he observed English country life in all its social aspects. From the richest of the peers to the poorest of the farmers, he witnesses intrigue, romance, and Arabella Trefoil's determined stalking of the wealthy but elusive Lord Rutherford, while still engaged to a diplomat, John Morton. Arabella emerges as one of Trollope's vivid protagonists in a novel that has much to say about the landed gentry in Victorian England. So I guess this American senator comes to England and comes to this little village and this little town and kind of observes the town, and in particular this woman, Arabella Trefoil's trying to woo this rich guy, even though she's engaged to another man, a diplomat. Although it says on the back here, she's a protagonist. So maybe they're both protagonists. This American senator and then her. As you can see, I tried to take off the price tag. I hate price tags. I hate having to peel them off because they always leave residue. So this is the World Classics edition. And I think World Classics is the same as the Oxford World Classics editions. I think it just took out the word Oxford, the title of the college, Oxford. But I think this is part of that. So if that's the case, I have quite a few of those. I have ones that just are the World Classics, but then I have some Oxford editions, like my copy of Monte Cristo, which I'm so close to finishing, and I want to finish it this year. And I think what I might do, after I film this, I might do a video where I talk about the classics. Because I was debating about doing that because of, I had already read, like, 2 of the classics that I had that I had my eye on reading. But anyway, so I might do that. Ooh, and here's some countries. Here's a quote. I wish to express the depth of my scorn for women who run down husbands, an offense that I do fear is gaining ground in this country. Which I'm guessing that's a quote by the American Senator himself, the title character. I'm so glad I'm not a woman back then, because, you know, you didn't have a lot of options, and you had to do whatever, the only option you had was find a man and make babies. Get married and make babies. Which I think is why a lot of people that are critical of romance, I was watching a video where one of the booktubers I like, she says that she claims that she's not a fan of romance and contemporary women's fiction, but recently has read some that are in that genre, and so she did a discussion video about it. It's Lauren in the Books, and she did a discussion about, like, her issues with the genre, with romance genre, and women's contemporary fiction, and people were commenting, pointing out, well, I see what your issue is, and there are books that don't have those issues that are still in that genre. And one person was saying that the reason why, even if and one of the things that she doesn't like is when the end game is just marriage for a woman. And someone's comment about historical fiction is the reason why they forgive the end goal being marriage in historical fiction is that, sadly, was typical. That was the only option women had. That was their way to happiness was getting married, you know, and making babies. Which, but I do, even, and today it's not as bad, but we still want, you know, love and stuff, but not all of us, our end game is not marriage necessarily. So I'm so glad that nowadays we have a little bit more freedom. We have more freedom. I mean, there's still sexism in the world, of course, and people still will assume, you know, make assumptions that you want to get married and have babies, and be like, why not? Why don't you want to? And how could you not want to? And I mean, that, every so often I've run into that a couple times where my older relatives have been like, oh, of course you want kids. Oh, or like, oh, you'll make a great mom. And it's like, well, no, I don't want kids. I'm my sister. I'll let my sister and my brother-in-law's siblings have kids. You know, and I'm not in a rush to get, you know, and I'm not, you know, obsessed finding a guy or anything like that, you know. But I mean, unfortunately, if I lived back then, it would be a different story, and I would be considered a spinster right now. Like, my friend Terry from Florida, and I joke about that we'll joke about that a lot, where, like, we're both in our 30s, and if we're both unmarried, so we would both be considered spinsters back then. So I'm glad I got that one, and I can take this off. I do have this on some of my wish list. I don't know if I put this on the thrift books wish list, or I don't think I put it on the book depository one yet, because yes, I'm on book depository too now. I don't know if I have it on the Amazon one. I mean, thrift books one. I'll have to check on that, but I do believe I am on the Amazon, so I can take it off the Amazon now. Okay, so next is a fantasy. I go back now. Going into that store, the Black Castle, I've been going back and forth basically between fantasy and classics, and they're actually side by side. It's like you have a row of shelves going this way, and then I go around the one shelf, the classic shelf, or actually I don't think it's a classic. I think it's a different genre, because classics is on this side. And then and then behind me is another shelf, and I don't think that's classics. So you go around the corner from that shelf, and there's the fantasy is. So it's like right around the corner from each other. So basically, I'm going like back and forth between the two. So I got some fantasy. Okay, so the first one, I already have 2 books by this author that I also bought from that store, and I was hoping to find the third book from that particular trilogy, because it's a trilogy called the Dragon Prince trilogy, by Melanie Rand. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. But I did not find the third book. Luckily, I have the first and the second book, because there have been a couple times where I've bought books, and that's why I keep debating about getting the I can never remember what that series is called. There's one series that the books are it's the French fantasy series. I cannot remember what it's called. But I see the second book there at the Rose Office bookshop every time I've gone, and I keep thinking, I should buy it, but then I don't have the first book in that series, and I keep making that mistake of buying books in a series and then never getting and it doesn't have the first book in that series. Like, I have the Bartimaeus trilogy, but I don't have the first book in that trilogy, and then the Emperor series by which is a historical fiction series, epic historical fiction about Rome, I think, and Julius Caesar. And I don't have that first book in that one either. And that, again, was one I bought at the Roast Office. So I had decided at the time, I'll just buy the other books in the series, and then I'll eventually at some point get the first book. But the problem is I can't start the series until I hit the first book, and at the moment I can't really buy anything online. So, because of the chair I'm sitting on. So eventually so I'm gonna wait at least a couple months to, get a couple paychecks before I can buy the books from the series. So that's kind of been a problem for me when you go used bookstore shopping. If you get a series, you might not get the first book, or you might not get like the second or the third book or whatever. You might not get all the books in series. But I was lucky in this case. I was able to. It had the whole trilogy there of the second trilogy in her overall series, because again, this is another one of the situations where the author has written a bunch of books in one big overall series, like one series about a whole world, and which, like, Robin Hobb does that, Brandon Sanderson is doing that, Stephen King kind of does it too, although his books are more like a bunch of different universes, while Robin Hobb, Brandon Sanderson, all their books are one universe, and the same thing with this author, Melanie Rand. So the other trilogy I got is the Dragon Star trilogy, which is what I was looking for with when I bought and ended up getting rid of what's that series called? The unicorn. Like, this girl was a unicorn. It turned out it was a sci-fi thing. It was more sci-fi. Now, some fantasy books, they can kind of have a little bit of sci-fi in the back burner a little bit, where there's, like, people saying, Lord of the Rings the Middle Earth is on another planet or something, or, like, where a fantasy world is another planet, or even, like, Discworld is like, a whole planet, but it's more fantasy. Even though it's on another planet, there's more of a fantasy feel to it. So there is a possibility that these are like that, like, sometimes, but, so this is a trilogy, and I have all 3 books. Let me show you all 3 of them. So the first book is Stronghold. Second one is Stronghold. The Dragon Token. And then Skyball. That is book. See, this is another thing I don't like, is when the price stickers are right over the title or over the picture on the cover. So it's like I can't tell if it's. So I'm gonna have to try to peel these off. But let's see if I can see which one is. Dragon Token is book 2. Okay. So this is the order. Okay, so let me read the back. Now in Stronghold, the first novel of Melanie's new Dragonstar trilogy, there is a devastating new challenge to the power of both the High Prince Rohan and Andre, Lord of the Sunrunners, at Goddess Keep, as a mysterious, seemingly unstoppable invasion force swarms across the land. For Andre, it signals the start of a nightmare made real, the horrifying fulfillment of his long-ago visions of his homeland in flames. And he will draw upon the forbidden sorcerer's magic in an attempt to destroy this enemy, which is bent on the extermination of all Sunrunners. Rohan and his son Paul will also fight the enemy with every weapon at their command, from their valiant warriors to conjurations with the sun, moons, and stars, to the terrifying presence of the dragons, and to the unforgiving wrath of the desert itself. Yet soon, they begin to fear that this invasion may prove not only the end of their dream of an unbreakable peace, but the beginning of the end of their entire world. Dun dun dun. So I'm guessing that one of these guys is probably, I guess Prince Rohan is probably the title character of the Dragon Prince in the first trilogy. I'm guessing. And this must be after he, beats the bad guys. But, I mean, for me, though, it's okay because I assume it's going to end on a sort of semi-happy note. Like a bittersweet note anyway, the first trilogy. So I feel like it doesn't spoil much. Because some of these books, you can kind of, there is kind of a bit of a predictability. Not 100% predictable, because that's why I love fantasies. They're not 100% predictable, but you can kind of predict a little bit. Like the basic skeleton of that everything's going to work out. And while we're on the fantasy kick, I also got, I think this is the next book series you read in Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings. After you read, I think it is. I have to look, because usually they have, like, with that one, they have a list of books of the series, but, in the After Electric Traders. And so the good news is I don't have to buy the first book right away. I mean, I would like to get it right away as soon as I can, but I don't have to. I can wait a little while because I need to read. Like I said, my goal is to, with a lot of my trilogies and series and duologies, I want to actually read them all in one, at least finish the trilogies and series within the year, instead of reading the first book and then the next book a year later, or reading the next book years later or something. I want to break that habit this year. Another one of my goals. But this is the Tawny Man trilogy, and both these covers and these covers look so 80s or 90s. The covers of these, you can see it. But this is about our main character Fitz in the first series, in the first trilogy, and the character the Fool, which I never realized until the last book, that I think the Fool is only, I always thought he was an old man, but a little bit older man, maybe not, old, but just in his, 40s or something. But although this is a medieval-inspired world, so a lot of people are a lot younger than you think, than their maturity level shows in these books. Because I think a lot of times these people have to mature really fast, because they grow up in a world where people die really young. And some of them are given responsibilities that you probably in our modern day would not give to someone at the age of 20 or a teenager. But yeah, the Fool, I think, is actually, but now that I think about it, I think the Fool might be in, his 20s. I mean, the impression I get in the third book is that maybe he's actually in his 20s, but then again, maybe he's just emotionally or mentally a lot younger than he actually is. But I think he's a lot younger than I assumed he was. So this book's about him and Fitz, I believe. And I secretly kind of ship them. I mean, I kind of ship them like as a bromance. I kind of like them together, which I don't know if I'm the only one, but just their relationship is so sweet and endearing, and if either one of them. Oh, yep. According to this, yeah, I think the Tawny Man trilogy is the next one you need to read after Live Ship Traders. So, and like I said, I've just barely started the Live Ship Traders. Of course, every time I watch like Reagan from Paris Projects, or not Frolic Through Thicket, not Ashley from Frolic Through Thicket, I can't talk, through Fiction. No, really, I can talk. I just can't do. I just barely can't. I still cannot do. I still will get THs and Fs mixed up when they're in one sentence. When a word that starts with a TH or an F. What is her name? Becca from Becca in the Books. She was talking about reading Live Ship Traders, and her book club group is reading that series, and I was like, oh, dang it, I have to get back into that series. Because, I just started the first book. So the first book, the one that I don't have in the Tawny Man trilogy, is Fool's Errand, so I need to get that one. And I don't think that one was there. I won't be so mad at myself if it turns out that one was there, but I don't think it was. So the next one is Golden Fool. Oh, and this also is not just about Fitz and the Fool, but there's also Prince Dutiful, who is the son, I think, of Ketterican and Prince, not Chivalry. Chivalry is Fitz's father. Prince, or King, I cannot remember his name. Not like I said, it's not Chivalry. I can't remember. I just read it last year. It's been a few months, but I read it last year. His name's gonna pop in my head after I'm done filming this. But yeah, I can't remember his name. But Ketterican's son, I think he's also a main character in this. Like, what I read on Goodreads and stuff, I think he... I like that. Robin Hall's books are diamonds in a sea of zircons. But anyway, I believe from what I remember reading on Goodreads' description of this trilogy is that Prince Dutiful is missing in one of the books. Goes missing in one of the books. Is missing in the first book, and Fitz in the Fool have to find him. And this one has, and I think the character that spin-off book, that's a standalone book that she just published, I think that character is first introduced in this book trilogy, because I see the name right here in this description. And I probably shouldn't really read the description of these books, because that one, I had the first book. And I don't have the first book in this trilogy, so, like I said, all I remember is that Prince Dutiful goes missing and Fitz and the Fool have to go find him. And there's some kind of thing with the Fool. Like some kind of, destiny or something. I love that, I love the idea of characters having a destiny and them trying to fight against their destiny, and I just love those kinds of tropes, those kinds of plots. They're some of my favorites. And now we are on to classics. So like I said, I go back and forth between the classics, and I almost bought another nonfiction book on Dickens. I almost bought that one, but I decided not to, because I still was kind of limited to time. I still didn't want to go crazy. and buy too many books. And I already bought like 4 or 5, I believe. I told my mom 4, because even though it's these books, I still felt a little guilty. So I told her. So I assumed I bought 4, but I probably bought like at least 5 or 6. But so let me go ahead and show you the first nonfiction. Since I'm talking about the nonfiction, at least I almost bought the Dickens one, a Dickens nonfiction but I ended up buying instead. But I did buy during my first visit this one. Jane Austen, Her Life and Letters, A Family Record. Which I'm wondering if Katie from Books and Things has this book or has read this book or talked about this book, or I might have seen on Goodreads or something. This is by her great grandnephew or something. I think that's who William Austen Lee is. And it's $9.95 in the U.S. So not bad. Almost 100 years after the death of Jane Austen, William Austen Lee and Arthur Austen Lee published Jane Austen, Her Life and Letters, A Family Record, 1913. I'm guessing that's when it was first published. The book lovingly details Jane's birth, childhood, adolescence, and maturity, the everyday minutiae of her life, the circumstances in which she wrote her juvenilia, and her 6 novels, in her early death, using Jane Austen's own letters, additional letters sent between a large and fond family, and family reminiscence. William and Richard Austen Lee continued the family tradition of carefully nurturing the reputation of a literary icon who also happened to be the most beloved aunt. I have to look. I'll just check some. Oh, wait a second. I'll just check something out because this actually, now that I think about it, this might be the I might have this in my copy of Persuasion. This might be the one that I have, because in my copy, my Penguin, mass market Penguin edition of Persuasion, there is a sample, or in the novel. So it'd be funny if I actually bought that one. I have to check. I'll have to look. Which would I will have mixed feelings about that, because a lot of people say it's not. That one, the reviews of that one are not necessarily not 100% positive, and they're kind of mixed because it does have a biased opinion about Jane Austen. So I have to look, but I might read it either way because I bought it and I spent the money. So even though and it's not a lot of money, especially since I got credit for it. So I have to look. I'll have to look on my copy of Persuasion. So weird. It was so sunny before, and now it's dark. Which I feel like, I think they did say it was going to rain today, which will be kind of disappointing, but it's okay. And then next is one that's a little different for me, but then it's not the first time I've kind of strayed a little bit, got something a little bit surprising. So Jean from Jean's Bookshop, and even Ashley, again, another Ashley from Frolic Through Fiction has also talked about this. There is the subgenre in fantasy that is mythology, because and they talk about, and I have liked some retellings of mythology and stuff. And I remember in theater class, in college, the one year I finally decided to take theater, get back to the world of theater again. We did a couple of excerpts. There were some excerpts we filmed scenes from some of these, and actually I forgot that on Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 1, in the episode Puppet Show, they do a scene from one of these plays, and it's plays, and that is the Oedipus plays of Sophocles. which I finally learned. I actually remember how to say that guy's name, because I remember when like I said, we did some of the scenes from one of these in my theater class, one in college, which I did. I think I did a pretty bad job at that. I remember being very nervous and stuff, and I sucked at that. But like I said, on Buffy, I forgot that on Buffy they did clips, so they did scenes from this during their, because they had to do, like, be part of the talent show, so that was their talent, was performing scenes, and they did a terrible job at it. And basically that would be me. I was like Willow. I was like either Willow or Xander, a mixture of Willow and Xander on the. I think I was more Xander because I didn't run off stage. You know, I was more like my performance was probably more like Xander's, where it was very stiff and I just read the lines. That was how terrible it was. But this is the plays from about Oedipus, and I think Oedipus, was he the one who had like a relationship with his mom and a sexual relationship with his mom and did not realize it? Or something, like his birth mother, or something, because weird stuff like that always happens. Actually, speaking of mythology, I was gonna show you, I recently bought those hardback books from Books Million of the Norse mythology one, but then I have trouble getting it back on my shelf because it's kind of in a tight spot on my shelf. So I decided not to bring that out. Like, I don't want to bring that out unless I'm reading. I'm going to keep it out for a while. So let's see what the summary says. Okay, The Fall of House Oedipus. Revising and updating his classic 1958 translation. Ooh, this was translated in 1958. Paul Roche captures the dramatic power and intensity, the subtleties of meaning and explosive emotions of Sophocles' great Fabian trilogy. In vivid poetic language, he presents the timeless story of a noble family moving toward catastrophe, dragged down from wealth and power by pride, cursed with incest, suicide, and murder. Yep, so this one, I think, involves Oedipus having a sexual relationship with his mother and not realizing it. So this is the Paul Roche translation for 58. I don't know what people say about this translation, but it was the one that was there, so I bought it. And like I said, this is not recently, like last year, I did kind of bought a couple of that were a little different. I got the Odyssey, the cloth-bound edition, and then I got, and then towards the summer of last year, I got the 4 Shakespeare tragedies, so that's a little different for me too. And then I also got the Iliad, which I think you're supposed to read that before the Odyssey. And then I got Paradise Lost. So it's a little bit, so I'm trying different things. Like kind of experimenting a little bit. Which all of them were kind of cheap versions, except for the Odyssey one. Other than that, they were all cheaper. Well, actually, the Iliad might be it. Although, no, I think I got the Iliad from the post office. Yeah, I think I might have got the Iliad. So, with the exception of the Odyssey, they're all cheap editions anyway. So, okay, and then the last 2 I got were. So I was actually looking. I decided I was, because I'm kind of a big fan of the American Revolution and all that, and French Revolution, and I like the idea of the 1700s and all of that whole time period. That's another time period I really like. So I looked up books and authors from that time period who published books then, and I've read a couple, at least 2. I've read Gulliver's Travels. I attempted to read Pamela, but that was a DNF this past year. I think, actually, no, I might have just read Gulliver's Travels. I don't know if I did have we used to have an Illustrated Classics copy of Robinson Crusoe that's also, I think, from the 1700s, but then we got rid of all of our illustrated classics. We sold them, I think. We moved. But I saw this author, Frances Burney, and I saw, and I can't remember what her other book, but I was looking for her other book, but I ended up seeing this one, Evelina. And I decided to get this one. Okay, so, because I want to get at least one of her works, so I'm going to try it out. So, Frances Burney's first and most endearingly popular novel is a vivid, satirical, and seductive account of the pleasures and dangers of fashionable life in the late 18th century London. As she describes her heroine's entry into society, womanhood, and inevitably love, Burney exposes the vulnerability of female innocence in an image-conscious and often cruel world, where social snobbery and sexual aggression are played out in public arenas, at pleasure gardens, theater visits, and balls. But Evelina's innocence also makes her a shrewd commentator on the excess and absurdities of manners and social ambitions, as well as attracting the attention of the eminently eligible Lord Orville. Evelina, comic and shrewd, is at once a guide to fashionable London, a satirical attack on the new consumerism, an investigation of woman's position in the late 18th century, and a love story. The new introduction in full notes to this edition help make this richness all the more readily available to the modern reader. Yeah, so these always, again, this is another one editions have introductions and notes on the text, which like I said, I skip those usually. The bibliography and the chronology of the author, and then explanatory notes at the end. Like I said, I usually skip that part because I just want to get to the story. Then the last thing I bought, I was trying to find some Tolstoy. I was hoping to find Boyhood, Youth, and I can't remember what the other part is called. The rest of it's a 3-word title, but it's the Tolstoy book that the first Tolstoy book that the book club that Emmy and Caroline Marie Reeds have created. They're doing a Tolstoy versus Dickens book club where they read one author one month and then another author the next month, and then they debate. They discuss it and then do a debate in favor of one author or the other. Which this was inspired by the Intelligence Squared debate. That was, it was a group of, professors discussing both authors, and and then they would have these actors, and one of them was actually Tom Hiddleston from Loki fame, and other great movies. They would perform scenes from the books, and then they even asked the actors afterwards who they preferred over but either Tolstoy, and actually Tom himself said Tolstoy, he prefers Tolstoy, but all the other people said Dickens. And there was actually, I was just thinking, there was a little kid actor in that, which makes sense for Dickens writes a lot about orphans, and check that later. Sorry about that, you guys. I'll check that and see. I mean, it can't be work because they already called me. Unless it might be, but I'll check it in a minute. Hopefully they won't call me again. But there was a little boy on that debate, a kid actor, and like I said, Dickens writes a lot about orphans, so it makes sense. And he of course said Dickens, and I was just thinking while watching that, I'd be like, I mean, granted, maybe I'm not giving the kid enough credit, but I don't see him reading the Tolstoy. So of course he's going to say Dickens. But like I said, maybe I'm not being fair. Maybe I'm being a little too judgmental. It's just, I assume with a kid, I don't see him getting into Tolstoy until he's like in his late teens, going into his 20s maybe. But maybe not. Maybe I wasn't giving the kid enough credit. But anyway, so I didn't find that first book that they're gonna read, but I did find this. Leo Tolstoy, Three Simple Men and Other Holy Folk Tales. So I'm guessing Tolstoy wrote a bunch of fairy tales and folk tales, and John M. Sweeney translated them. And this is that. Oh, here's a quote. The pleasure lies not in discovering the truth, but in searching for it. Oh, okay. So he wrote this after his two most famous novels, War and Peace and Anna Karenina. Okay, after War and Peace and Anna Karenina, Tolstoy was most loved in Russia for preserving and retelling folk tales. He composed his versions after years of soaking up legends and engaging ordinary Russians in conversation. His biographers tell us how he often invited guests to Vesnaya Polyana. Sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. Always to talk religion and philosophy, and how he listened carefully. He revered and observed the lives of ordinary men and women, peasants, serfs, pondering why they seemed to be happy and regardless of their stations in life, lack of formal education, and hapless circumstances. He listened to their stories most of all. You met these characters before. There is the simple, wise old man who understands more than he knows, the pompous religious expert who discovers his folly before it's too late, nosy neighbors and petty relatives, in a fight between good and evil, in which by the story's end good and evil almost seem to switch places. These classic tales, made popular long ago by Tolstoy in Russia, are retold here for English and readers in a new century. But yeah, when I first saw this, it was like it was either this or there was a copy of Anna Karenina and a copy of Ivan Ilyich, and I had both of those already. So it was like this was the best option. At the time, I was like, I want to get a Tolstoy book, so I decided to grab it. But but looking at it, it's like I'm glad I got it because it sounds really cool, and I like the idea of Russian folk tale. I'm reading a story about Russian folk tales. I think it's a really cool concept. And, I don't know about any other fairy tales. I only know, the, Grimm's Brothers fairy tales and Hans Christian Andersen's. I only know German fairy tales, and then, what was the other one? I can't remember what Hans Christian Andersen is. What he's like Swedish or something, or Viking. Like you don't know. Like I don't know a lot about the other stuff. I only know a little bit. Like if it happens to be like made into a movie or something. Okay, it has a list of the author's other books. Not the translator's work as well on here, which, yeah, obviously. This has the French Latin. I like this cover. It's so pretty. Yeah, I bet it would be nice to have a hardback copy of it, too. And I bet they could easily, foil, probably, I could see this being foiled a little bit as well, the title, and it being all shiny and stuff. Yeah, so I thought this looked really cool, once I looked more at it. And so that's my most recent, I think that's all of my most recent purchases that I got from there. Like I said, I might film another video today on, the classics I plan to read, even though I've already read 3 of the ones I wanted to read this year. Well, 2, technically, because the other one was kind of a last-minute decision. The other Tolstoy novel I read. So, if you've recently purchased anything, I would love to know. and I'd love to hear what you're currently reading right now. I am currently I'm finished working on finishing Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson, and then I'm gonna jump right back into Magician Apprentice, and I'm trying to use these as for my Holly's medieval readathon. Although I'm thinking about some of these books right now, like some of the classics like this one. I'm thinking about reading this one, and it could technically apply because it does have a woman on the cover, and one of the prompts is to read a book with a person on the cover. And then there's other books that I want to read as well, because I mean, it's not, you don't strictly have to read fantasy, but you almost feel like you should because it's a fantasy. It's a medieval readathon, and a lot of times fantasy stories are inspired by medieval worlds. Okay, so I hope you are continuing to wear a mask, washing your hands, because unfortunately the situation we're in, the pandemic, is not over yet. We are hopefully this vaccine will help. I hope you are continuing to be kind to everyone, and I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying their reading. All right, bye.